When I made the, when I transitioned from adult advisor to enrolling ESD, all of a sudden I had this whole list of things I needed to do. Yeah, go figure, right? One of those things that was on that list as an ESD was observations. I will admit, I was that guy who, one, probably didn't complete the minimum number required, and two, my observations, while I felt they had a lot of meaning, because you know there is a lot of meaning you can put into 10 words, they maybe weren't as descriptive as they could have been. So, but I had an excuse, because I wasn't enrolling ESD. There's, you know, I was living in both of those worlds as ESD and advisor. So Ron didn't really give me that hard of a time. However, in the conversation we had when I did transfer to the position of ESD, he said, now you know you got to do all of those observations. I said, sure, Ron, no problem, I got this. Okay, so I did struggle a lot with completing the required number of ESDs and with making those observations and making those observations meaningful. So my objectives today are to talk about the why of observations. Why do we observe? The what to observe, the how to observe, as well as the when to observe. But what I'm presenting today is just a basic kind of structure, because to me the most important part of observations really starts with us, the ESD, and our attitude towards observations. Okay, I admit when I first started doing observations, it was just kind of one of those things I knew I had to do. Yes, I know there's value in it, but I just need to get it done along with my other things. So it kind of took an attitude adjustment for me to help me be more effective on conducting observations. So the why, the what, the how, and the when. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. The why. First off, observations should be done because, of course, our role as supervisors, managers, is to coach for improvement, right? We're coaches. We're not just supervisors. We want all of our, those who work under us to be effective at what they do. So we're coaching for improvement because, you know, more effective interviews means more enrollments, right? So that's really, to me, the backbone of why is we should be coaching for improvement, coaching in a way that helps our advisors kind of perfect their craft or become better at what they do. Sometimes advisors could be good at maybe, you know, 3 things or 2 things, and so maybe there are areas where we really need to help them improve and become stronger. So that's the main, again, the backbone of coaching for, of the why is coaching for improvement. Another very important reason for us to do observations is basically to know what your people are doing, right? We sometimes aren't completely aware of what an advisor might be saying to a potential student. We might not even be aware of what an advisor might be, actions they might be doing during an interview. In fact, how many of you have ever been surprised, maybe through a mystery shop, on finding about some of the things maybe your advisor does that you didn't think they did? My hand is raised also. Okay, so that's another reason for the why, for the importance of conducting the observations, is knowing what our people are doing, what they are doing. Knowing that in their interviews and their presentations with potential students that they are clear in the messages that they are providing. Of course, there are those verbal messages, but there are also those nonverbal messages which can have an overall impact on the presentation. So clarity is important, as well as consistency. Knowing that the advisors are being consistent in the things that they're saying and doing during an applicant interview, because of course consistency means more than likely they're doing it every time. And that's what we want. We want to ensure that our advisors are consistent in what they're doing, that they don't necessarily go off into the deep end during an interview, because that is where we get into potential problems, especially when it comes to compliance issues, whenever there's an opportunity for them to kind of veer from the path that we know they should be on. So. And the Third reason as far as why, because it's our responsibility, okay? We're ESDs, and there's a responsibility to making sure that we are completing the required number of observations. There's a minimum of 2 observations per advisor per start cycle. Of course, if you are working with new advisors, then that number is increased. So you should be doing an additional 2 more per start cycle. And that's just focusing on the applicant interviews. Of course, there are other requirements for call observations, 2 per cycle per advisor, as well as follow-up meeting observations, 1 per cycle per advisor. So that's really kind of the why of why we should be doing what we're doing as far as in the area of observations. Let's talk about the what. What should we be doing as far as our observations? What should we be observing? Okay. Well, if you break the applicant interview down, of course, there's the opening statement, the interview, the tour, and the summary. And of course, now, what is the next step? Okay. So if we're looking at the opening statement, I believe we should be evaluating what exactly is being said during that open statement, where we are initially establishing what the expectation is. What is the expectation in that particular interview? What should the student expect to happen? And then also we should be establishing in the beginning that, hey, part of this process today is there's some decisions going to be made. When I first started doing observations, I will tell you that probably none of my advisors were real effective at establishing in the beginning that, hey, there's going to be a decision. You're going to decide whether San Joaquin Valley College can provide or is a good choice for you, whether this program is a good choice for you, but also we're going to decide whether you are actually a good prospect to become a student at SJVC. And one thing I'll say that I probably should have stated in the why is that, you know, observations are not just something where we're evaluating that they're doing the steps. Observations can also be used as a way of providing recognition and reinforcement to our advisors, especially if you have an advisor that does do well in certain areas. Then this is actually an opportunity to recognize that advisor when you're providing feedback. We'll talk about that a little later. But that, again, observations also can be utilized for recognition. So again, the opening statement, ensuring we're looking for that the expectations are established, and that also that key component is that decisions are going to be made at the end of this particular meeting. The interview, I put motivation and the why now. So we should be looking for the advisor's ability to determine what is the motivation behind the student walking in today. Why did that student come in? Of course, there are the specifics. Tell me what you have done. Tell me about your previous experience with education. But sometimes an advisor, and maybe following the steps, maybe misses what is that actual student's motivation. Why are they here? And what I like to call the why now. Oftentimes in observations, as you know, a student may have thought about doing this for 2 years, 3 years. Maybe this is actually their 3rd visit to the particular campus over the last 3 years. So I think it's important for us, as we're doing our observations, looking for, is that advisor effective, and asking the question, or determining what is the why now. The tour. I've seen a wide range of tours, as probably you who do observations have. It varies from maybe the tour that should be shortened to the tour that should be expanded, right? But one of the, I would say, the most important things that I see are missing from the tour is it's all about me. And what I mean by that, what has the advisor done to individualize that specific tour? Has the advisor utilized the information that was done in the initial question and answer, the initial interview, to tie it in to what's important to that specific prospective students? Again, what has the advisor done to show that he's concerned about the prospect and not necessarily just concerned about getting the student through the process. So it's all about me, and that me is not the advisor. Okay, that me is the student. So what is the student doing to be effective?